Well, to discuss further, we're now joined by Andrew Etzinger, spokesperson for Eskom. Andrew, thank you for joining us. We're apparently well beyond phase 3 load shedding, but you don't even have a word for what goes on beyond that. Just tell me, what percentage of the country does not have power right now, and how long will those areas be out for?
Good evening, Francis. At the moment, we are scheduling load shedding according to stage 3. We do have stage 4 beyond stage 3, so stage 3 is certainly not, let's say, the limit. We're hoping, of course, not to go to stage 4 as we did in 2008, but as we speak, about 90% of the country's electricity demand is being met, but there's about 10% which we can't meet. And what we're doing is, through the load shedding process, sharing out that 10% at different times to different communities within the country, both supplied by Eskom as well as those supplied by municipalities, in order to keep supply and demand in balance.
Andrew, just please clarify, because apparently stage 3 is 3,000 kilowatts that you have to cut, and you're actually cutting 4,000 kilowatts. So analysts are saying you're well beyond stage 3. And you're saying, no, we may go to stage 4. How bad is stage 4?
Stage 3 is where we are, the protocol we use to make up for a deficit of between 2,000 and 3,000 megawatts. So no, we're not load shedding beyond 3,000. Stage 4 would be just one step beyond stage 3, and if necessary, if we did need to implement stage 4 to protect the grid, then we would do so. And I think the important point here is that, again, this is a controlled process by Eskom to make sure that we don't risk a national blackout. This, as painful as it is and as infuriating to South Africa, and I think in your introduction you spoke about wringing of hands, etc. We do appreciate that, and we apologise to South Africans, but at the same time we need the support of the country, because we'll do the very best to run our power stations, but we are constrained. We'll make sure that we don't plunge the country into a total blackout. And in order to do so, unfortunately, we need to implement load shedding.
Andrew, people are so frustrated.
Sure.
I'm frustrated. I live in Sandton, which is the commercial hub of Johannesburg. Drove home yesterday. People were not moving, not able to get out of their buildings to get onto the streets. You said that power would return by 10 o'clock last night. After 11, it still wasn't there. And I think people have stopped believing what Eskom says. And I'd like to know if you're out of control, if the predictions don't count anymore, because earlier this week you said things were looking better. Now we're in the middle of a hot sunny day, a Friday afternoon, and 10% of the country, it sounds like, doesn't have power.
I understand, Francis, and that's completely understandable. At the beginning of this week, we said that the first half of the week was looking good, but that we would be constrained in the second half of the week, which is exactly where we find ourselves. So, in terms of accuracy of messaging, there certainly are times when we get it wrong, and there would be, in terms of following a load shedding schedule, also mistakes made by both Eskom as well as municipalities. But in the main, I must say, the forecast, the predictions, the load shedding has been undertaken, in a very precise way, and we've done our very best to alert the public to the risks. Unfortunately, and apologies to you also, Francis, for your frustration, unfortunately there's no quick fix here. We're going to have to, as I said, between constantly improving communication, constantly improving the accuracy of load shedding forecasts, and forecasts just generally of the outlook of the grid, certainly from Eskom's side. But we need business, we need the public to please be with us, and in particular to use electricity as sparingly as possible so that we can come through this.
How close are we to a blackout? Can we see a repeat of 2008? Otherwise, what will the new normal be? Are we looking at cuts every third day, every weekend, and in the week now, it seems?
We won't risk a blackout, and even in 2008, as dire as that situation was, that was not a complete blackout. And if we don't manage the situation as we're doing, there is a risk of a blackout. We've seen that recently in California, in parts of Europe, in India. That is where there's no electricity in the country. In South Africa, that would possibly take weeks to restart the grid. So the outlook, certainly, as we've indicated, is that for the next 2 to 3 years, we are going to be constrained. That doesn't mean daily load shedding or weekly load shedding, but what it does mean is that our reserve margin is going to be thinner than we would like. And what that means is that if we do find events such as, for example, recently the Majuba coal silo collapse, which of course has meant a big difference to the capacity coming out of that power station, then we can be in trouble. So we are building new power stations. Once they're online, of course, the whole equation changes, but we are constrained.
Andrew, I want to finish a final question. Just tell me, how are you sharing out these blackouts? Are hospitals affected? How is business being affected? Because you were moving more towards households, but I'm sure now that a lot of big businesses are being affected. And is the CEO leading crisis meetings every day, every hour even? And if that's not happening, why?
Two questions there, Francis. Firstly, the load shedding schedules and as to whether hospitals and businesses and shopping malls are included is all contained in a policy which we work to, which is specified by our regulator, referred to as the NRS 048. So these are not ad hoc decisions as to who gets load shed and who doesn't. There's very, very particular requirements which NERSA place on both Eskom as well as municipalities in the way that we draw up those schedules to make sure that they are fair, but would still protect the most vulnerable members of our communities. In terms of our chief executive, yes, of course. I was in a meeting virtually the whole afternoon, chaired by our chief executive, looking at this particular situation. That and his entire executive committee are on the job, and as all of us at Eskom are. And we're working extremely hard, 7 days a week in most cases, to do the very best we can under these circumstances.
All right, thank you very much. That was Andrew Etzinger, Eskom spokesperson. Well, moving